Welcome to Entry Point Church virtual service online, on YouTube, on Facebook. Our service today focuses on the power of words. We're glad that you've joined us today.
Hey God, it's me. We talked about this the other day in private. Remember when I lost my temper with my husband for something silly and insignificant, and I prayed to you for forgiveness? Because I wasn't very nice, and I asked you for strength because I need it. Well, apparently this might be a thing right now, because I'm not the only one. Pastor Nancy is doing an entire sermon on being careful with the words we say. So right now, I'm doing an expanded version of that same prayer and sharing it with my friends at Entry Point. God, during these stressful and uncertain times, please give us the insight to understand the power that our words have. Give us the wisdom to know the right words to say, and give us the strength to overcome our emotions and frustrations and be respectful and loving with both our words and deeds. And thank you, God, for the beautiful spring flowers. They are amazing again this year, and they are helpful in raising our spirits and giving us hope. Amen.
The other day, I saw this image on Facebook. Now, this image reminded me of a service we did a few years ago about the importance of being impeccable with our word. And so I decided it was high time to revisit this notion that there is power in our words. How do the things we say to others and to ourselves impact us directly in our lives, especially now? Now, when words are often all we have. Now, when we are living in closer proximity to others in our houses while we are safe at home, but far away from others. The Four Agreements is a book that was written by Don Miguel Ruiz. In this book, Ruiz tells us that as we grow up, we are given an understanding of life and what is truth from our parents. In essence, we are influenced by the worldview of our parents. As we mature and become adults, we need to figure out what our own truth and understanding is. Now, without making our parents out to be the bad guys, Ruiz suggests that some of the ways that we learned to see truth and view the world is not necessarily healthy for us as we become adults. Some of the voices in our heads sound a lot like our parents still trying to control our adult minds and bodies. Ruiz's Four Agreements are suggestions for ways to find peace and joy in our lives by rethinking some of what we used to believe and, as a result, changing the ways we think and act. Today, I want to focus on one of the four agreements, which is be impeccable with your word. Now, to be impeccable means to be without fault or blame. In other words, don't mess up with your word or your words. Now, about this agreement, Ruiz writes, speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of our word in the direction of truth and love. I love words. You know that about me. I've said it before. I have been described as a woman with more syllables than anyone else. I grew up in a household filled with words, a household that praised words. Some people had wall-to-wall carpeting. We had wall-to-wall words. People talked about their feelings in my house in the 50s. People laughed and told stories in my house. We all had a love affair with words in my home as I was growing up. My father often told us that we should be true to our word, always. I have always used words to process my thoughts and problems. I think through things by talking about them. One day in grad school, one of my speech communication professors was talking to the class about the power of words. He said, just by saying a word, you can actually bring an object into existence and people will react like it's actually present. Let's take the word snake. Now, some of you might recoil at that word as though there is an actual snake in front of you. We have the ability to use the symbolism of words and to create emotional reactions in people all the time. So we need to be aware of that, and we need to use that power very carefully. For example, I could call you a genius, and that would evoke a feeling, a reaction in you about yourself. Or I could call you a loser. I could say, you'll never amount to anything. Those words would evoke a completely different feeling and reaction in you about yourself. We have the ability to create fear or to inspire calm with our words. We have the opportunity to restore hope or to break someone's spirit with our words. Many of us have been told that if you can't say something nice about someone, don't say anything at all. Well, that's easy to say. And it's hard to do. It's so much more fun to say bad things about somebody. Somehow makes us feel better to find something wrong with someone else, doesn't it? Now, what is that about? I'll tell you what that's about. It's about our own brokenness. When we express ourselves impeccably, we express ourselves in the direction of truth and love. This includes expressing love, respect, and acceptance for ourselves. The emotions of jealousy and envy and frustration and sadness all fall into the category of not being impeccable. Anger and fear fall into the category of not being impeccable. Being impeccable with your word is about being truthful and honest and kind. It is very simple, but not easy. 16th century poet George Herbert once wrote, "Good words are worth much and cost little." What is unfortunate is that we have learned many bad habits over the years that condition us to use our emotional and verbal expressions in unkind ways. Just the way that we sometimes talk to ourselves or about ourselves can be very unpleasant. How many times a day do we ridicule ourselves? How often do we call ourselves names or tell ourselves we aren't good enough? That is an example of not being impeccable with our word. Stopping ourselves from gossiping about someone else is actually easier than retraining our inner monologue. We can walk away from other people who are gossiping. It's often harder to get away from the years of hateful self-talk that we have practiced much of our lives. Another part of being impeccable is to take total responsibility for our lives. How do we use words against ourselves that removes us from responsibility? That's actually an easy one. It's when we find ways to blame other people. As long as we can blame other people and find fault with them, we appear to be off the hook. But we're not. When we refuse to accept responsibility, we take that baggage with us, and that baggage keeps us broken and keeps us further away from being impeccable. To be impeccable with your word is an art requiring constant vigilance. It's not something that we can decide to do one day and master by the end of the week. We might think of being impeccable as being compassionate and accepting others and accepting ourselves. We recognize and we are aware of what people do, but we find a way to accept them, to embrace them, and accept and embrace ourselves as we all are, on our way, doing the best we can with what we have, where we are right now. Now, there's a beautiful passage in Ephesians that goes like this. When you talk, do not say harmful things, but say what people need, words that will help others become stronger. Then what you say will help those who listen to you. Especially right now, while we are living in closer quarters with fewer breaks away from home and away from each other, it is vitally important that we pay attention to our words. Perhaps we should use fewer of them and select them so much more carefully, because these days it is much harder to know what those around us in close proximity in our homes are feeling and thinking. These days of stress and trauma drive all of us to sometimes explode with words that we will regret later, when in fact we should perhaps be experiencing more prolonged silence and reflection. These days of uncertainty sometimes reduce the amount of positive words we use while our sensitivity becomes higher. In short, we're likely to say things we regret and can't take back. Now, more than ever, we need to be aware of the power of our words to encourage and to inspire and to show others that we value them and that we're interested in them. That's hard to do when we're all suffering the same malady. When we call to check up on our friends, our words are valuable and powerful. The words we write in our emails are valuable and powerful. These are the days in which we must be impeccable with our word. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of our word in the direction of truth and love. Amen. Thank you for joining our service today. We hope that you found something to give you comfort, encouragement, and inspiration. Join us next week as we celebrate Mother's Day with guest speaker Matt Dupree. In the meantime, have a great week. Do your very best to keep your head held high, to keep your chin up, and go in peace. Amen.